So before I begin, I'd just like to give a quick bio of myself. I was born and raised in the United States, but I'm ethnically Uyghur. So we're Muslim by religion, Turkic by race, and I kind of grew up learning about what is happening to our homeland, East Turkestan, under the shadows of my father's political activism. And it wasn't until, late high school, early college, when I started to really get a sense of what this actually meant and what exactly was happening and what China's motives were. And I went to Turkey and interviewed scores of refugees who talked about the horrible atrocities taking place, the way they were tortured in Chinese prisons, and the way that basically our way of life has been completely attacked, and the fact that China is essentially trying to get rid of the Uyghur population. So what we see behind me is actually, I'll explain later into the PowerPoint, but is actually from a picture of a concentration camp in occupied East Turkestan. And again, this is a nation that has been forgotten by most of the Islamic world, and that is why I'm here today to shed light on this forgotten nation, East Turkestan. So this right here is a map of the far top right is East Turkestan. It's also known as Xinjiang, which China has renamed the territory as. It actually means new territory in Chinese. And it's actually really offensive for Uyghurs to even hear that name. And unfortunately, by most media reports, that is what it's called. So you hear as the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, which I wrote up on the top. And the reason why it's offensive is because, number one, it's like, imagine someone, you had a name growing up your entire life, someone kidnaps you, takes you, renames you as someone else, meaning, let's say, new property, and it's in a different language of the kidnapper, and then calls you that for the rest of your life. And then in addition to that, everyone who vouches for you to release you also calls you by that name. It's like the same idea. So we're calling on the international community to stop using the term Xinjiang and to start using the term East Turkestan. And if you want to raise awareness, talk about the fact that it's an occupied territory, you can say occupied East Turkestan. So I'm mainly mentioning this because Xinjiang is usually the term that you'll see on news sites, on documentaries, anything you'll probably hear as, oh, the Uyghurs from Xinjiang. But again, using the term Xinjiang is offensive, and we try to avoid using that. So throughout this presentation, I will not be calling it Xinjiang, I'll be calling it East Turkestan, which is the original name of our territory. In addition to that, you have like Tibet and Inner Mongolia that's been occupied and oppressed by China. So, and look, if you look at the land, it's around 1/6 the size of, after China occupied it, now it's the 1/6 the size of that land. And China's report in 2015 claims that the population of Uyghurs was around 11.3 million. But estimates by Uyghur scholars have estimated at least 35 million Uyghur people. In addition to that, we also have other Turkic Muslims living in the region as well, including Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, also Tajik people and Mongols living there. So that's why throughout this presentation, I'll also be saying people of East Turkestan instead of just saying Uyghurs, because it's not just the Uyghurs being oppressed. And I don't want to exclude the other people who are also being sent to camps and who are also facing this ruthless crackdown by the Chinese government. And again, in September 2018, the Chinese official claimed that our population was 6 to 7 million. So the Chinese government is purposely lowering our numbers on paper as well, saying that these are the numbers, and to essentially lower us, or try to eradicate us even through numbers. But the real number is an estimated 35 million. This is the national flag of East Turkestan. For those who know what the Turkish flag looks like, it's pretty much exactly the same, but it's light blue. And again, the majority of it is comprised of Uyghurs who are Turkic, and then in addition to that, you have a few million other Turkic Muslims living there as well. Here's some scenes of the Uyghur homeland, East Turkestan, so you can see how beautiful the land is. You have mountains, river valleys, grasslands. And I think I might actually, no, never mind. And then also, the reason why China has attempted to maintain tight control of the region is because it's so rich in minerals and resources. And this is the reason why they occupied it, and the main reasons they occupied it in the first place. So if you look at these numbers, the 150 billion barrels are provided in oil reserve, 23.5 billion cubic meters of natural gas in 2017, and 40% of China's coal comes from the East Turkestan region. So and also in addition to that, you have the One Belt One Road initiative that's being widely used in the East Turkestan region. So China is really, taking use of this land to its fullest ability. And also, in addition, and from that, you have exacerbating poverty and division between, or a wider gap between the rich and poor occurring. And that's also caused a lot of the frustrations amongst the Uyghur communities about the fact that, these resources are being taken from the land and people are not being given equal opportunity for jobs and for land resources and so on. So before I delve into the current situation, which is the most pressing part, I don't want to just ignore the history, because I think this is usually what's missing out of the narrative. Usually when you hear about this region, we don't really know who the Uyghurs are, what our history is, and the fact that we are in occupied territory. And that's usually what's missing out of the narrative. So what I'm going to do is I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just kind of walk through briefly. So the Uyghurs lived with centuries of independence until we were invaded by the Manchus in 1759. And in 1884, that's when the region was named as Xinjiang, which again means new territory. And East Turkestan, for thousands of years, has been a prominent center of commerce for more than 2,000 years, and it gave birth to many great civilizations. Much of the Islamization of Central Asia actually started from cities like Kashgar, which is like the cultural and historical hub of East Turkestan, and is one of the destinations that Marco Polo even traveled to. And if you go to the region, right now, unfortunately, China is destroying a lot of our old structures. You can sense the old history, like through the buildings, the mosques, and the fact that the region has thousands of years of rich history. And again, China's trying to wipe out this history and essentially claim that East Turkestan has always been a part of China, and so on. So, and then after the Manchus invaded us, the Manchu Empire collapsed in 1911, and that was when the first Chinese invasion took place in 1912, and that was when nationalist China came to power. And after that, we had numerous rebellions that took place that allowed for the establishment of the first East Turkestan Islamic Republic, and this took place in 1933. Unfortunately, it was shortly crushed afterwards by the help of the Soviet Union. And then again, with multiple rebellions and fighting, they were able to establish a second East Turkestan Islamic Republic, and this took place in 1944. And unfortunately, again, that was crushed through the help of the Soviet Union in 1949 when communist China came to power. And since then, East Turkestan has been under the occupation of China, and Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims have been subject to systematic forms of ethnic cleansing and genocide. So this is a picture of the establishment of the first East Turkestan Islamic Republic in 1933, and this took place in Kashgar. And you can see a lot of the government officials lined up in this photo. And then this is a picture from the establishment of the second East Turkestan Republic in 1944. And again, unfortunately, this was shortly crushed 5 years later through the help of the Soviet Union. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right into the situation. If you guys have any questions about the history, feel free to ask questions at the end or after the talk is over. So going back to this first photo that you guys saw in the very beginning, this photo actually comes from this photo right here. And this is a photo of a camp in Lop County, East Turkestan. And this was taken in 2017. And this was actually posted by the Chinese government on the popular social media site or social media app that almost everyone in China uses called WeChat. And basically they posted this saying that these people, we're keeping you all safe from them because they are dangerous people. So this was actually posted by the government. And these are scores of Uyghur men that you see locked up in these camps. Party official, and this was posted on Radio Free Asia. And they said that, and this
party official was trying to justify why millions of people have been put in these camps, and he says they have been affected with religious extremism and violent terrorist ideology, and therefore they must seek treatment from a hospital as an inpatient. In recent years, there have been violent incidents occurring in Xinjiang, one after another, instigated by the three evil forces of terrorism: religious extremism and separatism. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the second paragraph. They say that if we do not eradicate religious extremism at its roots, the violent terrorist incidents will grow and spread all over like an incurable malignant tumor. So basically, China is trying to get rid of what they claim to be the source of extremism, which is Islam. So essentially, they're doing that by banning the practice of Islam completely and trying to put people into camps to quote-unquote re-educate them and eradicate them of this, this disease that could end up being a tumor. They said this is why they must be admitted to a re-education hospital in time to treat and cleanse the virus from their brain and restore their normal mind. So they're claiming that Uyghurs are not normal. And this is part of a comprehensive rescue mission to save them. And then again, this is part of any colonial narrative that you hear for any type of occupation or colonial ambition. And in these camps, essentially what they're forced to do is they're forced to denounce Islam, adopt atheism, and basically say that President Xi Jinping is God. So they're forced to recite and memorize Chinese propaganda poetry. In order for them to even get food, they have to thank President Xi. They have to chant phrases like, there is no such thing as a religion, or religion is dangerous. And this is coming from first-hand witnesses for those who've been in the camps beforehand. Another slogan that was chanted was leniency for those who repent and punishment for those who resist. And I'll talk about ways that Uyghurs are being tortured in these camps as well. I'm going to play a quick video on a scene that took place in one of these camps of people being forced to chant these phrases, or sing a Chinese propaganda song. They're essentially becoming modern-day slaves because they're getting to little to no pay. And again, I'll talk about the ways that they're being tortured. They're also forced to speak Chinese. They're not allowed to speak the Uyghur language in these camps. And for those who even master the Chinese language and demonstrate that mastery, they're not being released from the camps. And one way that we are figuring out the existence of these camps is through satellite imagery. Right now, they've located more than 1,400 camps in the entire region that we surfaced on alone. This is one of the bigger camps that they've located, and they've said that these camps are just increasing by size, day by day. And here you can see on the right that these are the prison dorms, and on the far left are the police buildings that are controlling this entire vicinity. And this is just one of many camps. If you go on Google Maps and you type this, if you type in like the longitude and latitude, you can zoom in and see this exact camp. And I tried it myself, and I didn't want to believe it, but that was the reality. They're building camps so that it's almost impossible. It's actually impossible for people to escape. But even if they escape, like they're being built in areas and often in arid areas where even if they're escaped, they cannot. By the time they try to reach any city, they're already dead. So one of them is located in the Gansu, in Langchao, right? And basically, it's literally in the middle of the desert. And this is essentially what can hold up to 1 million people in this one camp alone. And again, it was being built since 2013. So these have been projects that the Chinese government have been started earlier on. It's not a recent thing. This is something on the Chinese government's agenda for a while. It's been on the agenda for a while. And again, with this, you have millions of people whose families have been torn apart, including my own family. So this is a picture of some of my extended family members from my father's side. And this is my aunt's. So the guy the third person there, it's hard to see his face. He's actually based in in the Washington D.C. area, and his brother, who was next to him on his right, was actually sentenced to 15 years of prison because he came to the United States to attend my cousin's wedding in 2014. And his daughter and his niece, who is Papa's daughter, has been in the camp for over 2 years. We don't know if she's alive or dead. She's a physical education teacher, a professional soccer player, and again, we don't know where she is and her whereabouts. And these are some of the other relatives that have also been disappeared or sent to camp, some form of camp or detention. Also, his brother also was the one whose brother was lethally injected in these camps. And we didn't actually find out that he was lethally injected until this past summer. And he actually passed away in November 2017. So we didn't know how he died. And then later on we found out he was essentially killed in the camp. And lethal injection is now being widely used as a way to essentially wipe out people. And again, if you meet any of the Uyghur, most people have at least several family members or relatives in these camps. And I'm going to show you guys some video footage of that was leaked by Bitter Winter Reports. We had construction workers essentially sneaking some footage of what the camps looks like inside. But this is before people have been put inside these camps, so keep that in mind when you watch this video.
The northern hillside of Inyeir Township in Ining City, Xinjiang, was originally an open space and also served as a shooting range for militia training. Now, a transformation through education camp was built here. The camp is massive in size, containing 4 building complexes with a floor space area of about 110,000 square meters. The camp can accommodate several thousand people. According to a GPS image published by Sean Zhou, a Chinese student in Canada, a plot of land that was empty in mid-October of 2017 was covered in buildings by August of 2018. In August, our reporter penetrated the Inyeir transformation through education camp and photographed its interior constructions. Within the transformation through education camp, a complex of orange buildings lined up side by side holds dormitories for the camp's students. And upon closer inspection of the exteriors of the buildings in the complex, one can see that each building is 4 stories tall, and that the windows of each floor are fitted with guard railing, as well as an additional layer of guard netting. The exit areas of each building are fitted with 3 surveillance cameras apiece, which comprehensively monitor the area from the left, right, and center. A slogan is written on the external walls of the buildings, which reads, "Heartfelt thanks for the cordial care of the Party Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping as the core." Inside the buildings, the interior constructions are just like the cells of a prison or detention center. Each room has double iron doors, and the outermost iron door also has guard railing and a keypad lock. Each dorm room has its own washroom and is fitted with a surveillance camera. According to a leak from an inside source, up to 15 people can live in each dorm. Surveying has also revealed that each floor holds 28 dorm rooms and 3 classrooms. Various slogans are written on the walls outside of the classrooms, such as, "Make a habit of studying Mandarin," and "Follow the guidance of Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era," and untiringly strive to realize the China dream of a great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Besides, this floor of the building also contains a standalone surveillance room. From the large screen monitor, it is apparent that 360-degree surveillance cameras are installed in every corner of the building, including not only classrooms, dormitories, and corridors, but even washrooms. Every move by the detainees is monitored 24 hours a day. They are totally deprived of freedom and privacy. The entirety of each building is stringently guarded, and in addition to surveillance cameras being installed in every corner, the entrance to the building has been fitted with an iron gate as well. In the corridors, the windows of each room have also been sealed with tight iron bars and wire netting. Even the windows in the room that may be used as the student cafeteria are no exception. It is nearly impossible for the people being held in these buildings to escape. Our reporter also noticed that there are several areas surrounded by chain link fencing on empty land in front of certain buildings, next to which large quantities of wire netting that hasn't yet been used is stacked in piles. On one side of the fencing, the words "Emergency Asylum" are written. According to an inside source from the public security system, this emergency asylum is most likely an outside walking area for detainees. An outside walking area is a place in the courtyard of a prison, where the prison allows its inmates to go to get some exercise at set times. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP authorities, have been desperately denying the existence of transformation through education camps. But recently, facing the international community's constant condemnation, the CCP authorities have withdrawn their previous statement and attempted to justify their persecution on Uyghurs, claiming that they are vocational training centers. The Inyear Transformation Through Education camp has been advertised to the outside world as a vocational training school, though there is no difference between its inner constructions and those of a prison.
Because the construction worker of the camp was actually the one who released his footage, and then they found out who it was, and now his whereabouts are unknown. So if we can go back to the PowerPoint. And a lot of the girls, including also the men too, they're being forcibly sterilized by taking drugs that they don't even know what they are. And for girls, they realize that all of a sudden they stop menstruating. And just a quick disclaimer, a lot of what I'm going to say is very heavy, so I apologize in advance. Organ harvestation, there's been saying that detainees, their bodies are taken and they're being taken for this huge system economy of using the organs for essentially like organ transplants, but against the will of the person. And a lot of times, even if someone's perfectly healthy, they put them to sleep, but then they use the organs for that. And I'll show you guys evidence of some of the ways that they're transporting these organs out. Medical experimentation, so we had one camp survivor who's based in DC who talked about how every month they would get shots that they had no idea what they were, and their blood would be taken. And they would get like iris checks, their eyes checked, their fingerprints, and again, this is all against the will of the people. A lot of people are forced to sit in what's called a tiger chair, essentially where they're clamped down in this chair for hours on end as a form of punishment if they show like any type of resistance or they're unable to memorize the propaganda. And sometimes this happens to solitary confinement for multiple days. Also, one camp survivor talked about how she was electrically shocked, electrocuted, to the point where she said, like, just kill me, I don't want to live anymore. And they've actually got more evidence of this through people who constructed the camps, people who were working in the camps, and saying, yeah, we're using more methods of electric shock, and that actually not only like affect the veins, but literally make you feel like you're dying. And then again, also another way is just people are being beaten to death. And another thing is that they're taking these bodies and they're cremating these bodies. They're burning these bodies to hide the evidence of bodies coming out of these camps. And another way, and I'll touch on that a little bit later, another thing that's happening is they're forcing Muslims to eat, the Uyghur Muslims to eat pork and drink alcohol. And they know that this is a deliberate attempt to humiliate them. They know that consuming these products or these things are forbidden in Islam. And essentially they're left with no other choice because sometimes that's the only thing that they're given. This is the camp survivor that I was mentioning to you before. Her name is Mihrigo Tutsun. She's a 29-year-old Uyghur woman who was actually living in Egypt with her husband, and she gave birth to triplets. She was studying in Egypt, and because she gave birth to triplets, she realized she needed help to help take care of her babies. So she decided to go back to East Turkestan to have her parents help. And as soon as she arrived in the airport, they detained her, and they took her 3 babies away, who at this point were around 2 months old, and this is happening in 2015, by the way. and she was detained a total of 3 times. And one of her babies actually got, they released her once, and by the time she was released, they said one of your babies is extremely sick. And the next day her baby died. And she said that they operated on my babies. I don't know what they did to them, but she still doesn't know how her baby died, what the reason was. She said they were perfectly healthy before I was detained. And she was sent to detention a total of 3 times. And she talked about the way, and she was sent to these camps, and she talked about the ways that she was tortured. And she said that she spent 3 months in a cramped, suffocating prison cell with 60 other women, having to sleep in turns, using the toilet in front of security cameras, and sing songs praising the Chinese Communist Party. She and other inmates were forced to take unknown medication, including pills that made them faint, and a white liquid that caused bleeding in some women and loss of menstruation in others. Thorsten said 9 women from her cell died during her 3 months there. And I'll be touching on later about kind of like an estimation of the number of people dying just based off this one woman's testimony. And she said that I thought I'd rather die than go through this torture. I begged them to kill me. And eventually she was actually released because her children were Egyptian citizens. In China's expelling out all foreign citizens, they were like, who claimed these babies? And eventually she made it out and is now in the United States. And again, she talked about how there was a 23-year-old woman in the camp named Patsum. Her crime was that she attended a wedding in 2014 that was held according to Islamic traditions, where people did not dance, sing, or drink alcohol. She said 400 people who attended that wedding were all taken to the camps. When she was taken, she had left her 2 kids in the field. She agonized every day about where her children were. And one night, she suddenly dropped to the floor and stopped breathing. And then after that, several people took her body away, and she was never to be seen again. So again, like, people who are being sent to the camps, the children are just left. So they're either abandoned in the streets, or they're being sent to orphanage. And the parents don't know where their kids are, don't know, their conditions they're alive in. And also, the children don't know where their parents are oftentimes. And so this is just a rough estimate of the number of people dying just through her one testimony. So, if she said the death rate of 3 months, 9 people out of 68 people in a cell. The number of Uyghurs dead in 3 months out of 1 million, which is the number that most media sources are claiming that these, is the number of people in these camps. That is 132,400 people being killed within 3 months. So you do the math, and that's within a span of a year. That's over 1 million people being killed. And again, this doesn't include people in prisons. This is just camps, because right now there are also millions of people in prisons. And this also does not include children as well. And again, these numbers are being hidden. They're not, and it's hard for people to even get these exact numbers right now, because these bodies are being cremated, and the Chinese government is purposely, hiding these kind of numbers from being released. This is another torture account of another woman who spent a lot of her life in prison. She now lives abroad, and she was in prison when she was 16. Her 2 older brothers were executed in front of her. The 3rd older brother was executed without her presence. Father died in the prison. Her mother died at home due to a heart attack after losing her husband and sons. She was gang raped by prison guards for many times. She had miscarriages twice in a prison. She was forced to shout Communist Party Akbar instead of Allahu Akbar. So essentially they have to replace the name Allah with Communist Party or Xi Jinping. Her face was burned with cigarettes and was told, call your God for rescue. Basically humiliating and mocking them for calling Islam and saying look, no one can save you. Your God, your supposed God is not here to do anything for you. She was kept in a water cell for many months, and she has more than 100 scars on her face and body, and she has actually told the world, I want the world to see what the Chinese have done to me. Again, people in the camp are not allowed to speak their own language, and if they do so, they speak the Uyghur language, then they get beaten and sent to solitary confinement. And outside of these camps, China's carrying out a campaign to basically wipe out specifically, like particularly like influential people who are top academics, who are leaders, who have the ability to influence Uyghur society. So these are some academics, for example, who are part of the Xinjiang University. So for example, we have Saddam Saud, who got death sentence. He was the head of the Department of Education. The president of Xinjiang University got a death sentence. His name is Pashbulat Tayyip. Another death sentence for Professor Halmat Ubopor. He's a president of the Xinjiang Medical University. And we have Yel Kurozi, who got sentenced to life in prison. And just recently we got more news of very popular singers of our country who got sentenced to prison terms as well. And also like we would, hip-hop artists, anyone or in like renowned scholars and academics have all just disappeared or sent to prison. And again, they're building crematoria to hide the evidence of these bodies coming out of the camps. And this is another way to get rid of the Islamic tradition of burying bodies as well. This is a before and after picture, a past and present picture of the Kuchon County Bazaar, which usually is very packed and very busy. And now so that's the left, and then the right nowadays it's completely empty. Nowadays you walk through these towns and villages, it's almost completely empty because so many people are in some form of detention or prison. There's one letter someone released in Kashmir says that 95% of the people are in some form of detention. They're locked up, and the 5% remaining are usually kids or government workers. This is a tweet from Emily Fang. She's a reporter and was based in China for some time, and she took these pictures and said that residents said that 70 to 80% of the adults are in some form of detention. And you can see the streets are just empty. Shops have been closed down, houses have been closed down, and also homes are being now destroyed because no one's residing in them. And China is using these to convert them into cultural propaganda centers for tourist reasons. And again, the children of these detainees have been sent to state-run orphanages where they're taught to hate their own identity, their religion, and so in the past, like this is how you usually see Uyghur kids, like as they dress in their traditional clothing, the Uyghur clothing. You can see down there the dresses they wear for dancing. They would be in school learning the Uyghur language. At one point we had Uyghur language schools where they can actually speak their mother tongue and learn it and learn how to speak and read it. And this is what the state of Uyghur children have now become. They're forced to wear Confucian clothing, which Chinese kids don't even have to wear. And therefore being forcibly assimilated, forced to speak Chinese even if they haven't ever spoken Chinese in their entire life, and they're being subject to abuse and torture as well. This is so this tweet was sharing this article about some of the conditions in these orphanages, and the brief translation talked about how some children attempted suicide by drinking detergent, and then later in the report it says by eating fish bones. And a lot of children ask, are we in prison? They don't know where they are. And they're being traumatized. Just like the family separation policies you see here in the United States under Trump's administration, this is happening on a mass scale in East Turkestan. This is really graphic, I'm sorry. This is recent news circulated by Uyghur media sources. Because children are now being abandoned or being sent to orphanages or now left on streets, this boy, Rahmatullah, forgetting his last name, sorry, I wrote it in the notes. He was found frozen to death on the streets. And this is the fate of many Uyghurs now, Uyghur children nowadays. And his parents, both of his parents are in the camps as well. And again, outside of these camps, life is no better, right? Everything that you do is being monitored by the government. So practicing Islam is essentially forbidden. Even if I say Assalamu alaikum, that's a crime and can send you to prison for around 10 years. Praying is banned, fasting is banned, going on Hajj is banned, wearing a beard or hijab is banned, naming your baby an Islamic name is banned. And if your name is already an Islamic name, let's say you grew up being named Muhammad, you're forced to change your name to quote unquote un-Islamic name, or you're encouraged to change it to an ethnic Han name. Islamic funeral traditions are banned. Islamic, so the nikah is banned, so people are not being, under Islamic law, they're not actually getting married. They're being forced to have the hen traditional marriage ceremony. Even an O'Neill Quran is banned. And they went on unsanctioned trip to Hajj. He went on a Hajj pilgrimage. He got sentenced to death, and he's a famous philanthropist. And China also seized around over $1 million of his assets. So they're purposely targeting really rich, influential people so they can essentially take their assets as well. And you can see some of how the architecture is still standing, but essentially the main component is now selling alcohol. Han government officials who are literally going to people, measuring their length of their dress and taking scissors and actually cutting them in front in the public, saying that your dress is too long and that this is a sign of potential religious extremism. And something like this can actually send you to the camp as well. Also, another way, obviously, that they're carrying out this genocide is by trying to get rid of the next generation of Uyghurs. And one way that they're doing this is forcing Uyghur women to marry ethnic Han men. And they threaten these women, saying that if you don't marry the ethnic Han Chinese men, we are sending your family to the camp. So a lot of times these women are doing it to save their families. And this is state-induced rape, basically. This is all against the will of these women. If you read this in Chinese, it's translating. I can't read Chinese, but I had asked someone who speaks Chinese to translate this for me. It was saying something like upholding civility and uniting the ethnic. Big reason is because of the mass surveillance state. So during a single day, Uyghurs are subject to multiple interrogations. They have to go through multiple checkpoints. They have to constantly have their ID on them. And many people actually don't even, people who don't have ID, they're basically doomed and they're being sent to cancer prisons because of their undocumentation. There's tracking by facial recognition, and you have to install mandatory GPS devices on their cars. Their phones are being checked. They have to download an app that actually screens their phone to see if there's any material that indicates any kind of practice of religion, which they claim to be as a indication for religious extremism. And again, they also have the Chinese government has also collected millions of samples of DNA and retina scans and voice prints of Uyghurs. Essentially, people who lived in the region who come out says that it almost feels like you're suffocating every day. It feels like you're dying every day, but you're not actually dying. Some people have even, one person was telling me, they were essentially envious of other genocides that have taken place because their Rohingyas, they're like, oh, these people get to die right away. We wish they could just kill us off because this life is not a life. It feels like you're the Walking Dead, essentially. And it's just living in this constant fear of being sent to a camp or a prison. And even if you're living, you're not being sent to the camps, all of your neighbors and everyone has just disappeared in front of your eyes, and you know exactly what's happening. You have surveillance in what are supposed to be sacred and religious spaces. Obviously now entering mosques is completely forbidden. This was a tweet that was released November 15, 2017. All the mosques have now been empty, but even if you go into the mosque, you see surveillance cameras. And then you also have surveillance in the homes. And obviously the homes is meant to be a private space. But what they've done is they've essentially sent over 1 million Han government officials to live inside Uyghur homes to make sure they're not engaging in religion and to assess their political views. And what the Chinese government says that this is doing is we're doing this to promote ethnic unity. This is just to promote positive vibes, and to promote, and they call them relatives. They tell the Han Chinese that these are your relatives, and let's try to mend these, to make these relations better. But essentially these people are meant to record what you're doing, and to report what you're doing, and to see if you are worthy to be sent to the camp. And what they would do is not just ask you up front, do you pray or not, or see if there's a Quran in the house. They'll literally test them by giving them, for example, a piece of pork, and they're like, hey, eat this. And if they see the Uyghur person wince, or they're like, no, I'd rather not, that's a sign, that's an enough sign for you to be sent to the camp. So they're using different means to test their quote unquote religious views and their level of loyalty to the Communist Party. And they're also encouraged to sleep under the same covers as the Uyghur people. So you see this picture here. This is posted by a Chinese government worker who posted on WeChat saying like, oh, this is part of the ethnic unity program, and the woman on the far left is Uyghur. And then they're forced to post these photos showing how great of a program this is. And another way that this is an ethnic cleansing, one of the characteristics of ethnic cleansing is when you have forcible transferring of people, thousands of people. And they actually have reported that 200 to 300,000 Uyghurs have actually been transported from East Turkestan to mainland parts of China. And they've been put inside trains. These people have not been given tickets, and these people don't know, their locations are unknown. Their whereabouts are unknown, and we don't know which prisons that they've been sent to, if they're being killed off at this very moment. But here's and also this is just mirroring straight up the Holocaust. Nazi Germany, what they did to the Jews, and again, the world has not been taking action, or the government's community. This is going back to the organ harvestation that I was pointing out earlier. This is a scene in the Kashgar airport, recently broadcast by Japanese TV, and there's a sign that actually says, human organs transportation route. This is where people are supposed to be transporting organs. And they literally have a government sanction, the government endorsed signs that lead people to continue these actions. And you might wonder, okay, when people escape this region, escape East Turkestan, sometimes you think that, the fate is not always positive. You have, for example, in 2015, in July, you had hundreds of people, Uyghur people who fled to Thailand, who, by Chinese pressure, ended up being deported back to China and never to be seen again. They're the most Uyghurs have predicted that they've been killed off in prisons. And this is just some scenes of them being sent back to China, and the Thailand authorities obviously abided by that. And last year, the Chinese government pressured the Egyptian government to deport Uyghur students studying at the Al-Azhar University back to China, and a bunch of them were actually arrested and deported back. So and again, a lot of what I'm saying is obviously only the tip of the iceberg. I would say it's only 15% of what's actually going on. There's still so much being released to the world, and I'd be happy to talk more about what's happening for a Q&A if we have time. But to jump right ahead, what do the people of East Turkestan want? What we're seeking right now is for the Chinese government to stop these arbitrary detentions and human rights abuses in East Turkestan, protect the lives of the Uyghur people and other Turkic people being held in concentration camps, close all concentration camps and release all Uyghur political prisoners, allow members of international and U.S. organizations to go to East Turkestan, inspect the concentration camps and prisons of political prisoners, evaluate crimes on humanity have been committed, and figure out how many Uyghurs have been killed. Also allow the Uyghurs living abroad to visit their homelands and resume all communications between East Turkestan and abroad. So right now, almost all Uyghurs abroad have been cut off, have been cut off from contacting their relatives. They can't do so freely. They can't call their relatives, figure out where they are, how they are, and this is creating an everlasting anxiety by the Uyghur diaspora community, and especially when you know that your relatives can be sent to a camp any moment. It's this overwhelming state of mental health that's really depressing. Another thing that we would like is that we're trying to appeal to the U.S. government to grant Uyghurs similar status as Tibetans, also to recognize the occupation of East Turkestan and realize that we are also seeking independence as a country because we are in occupied territory. And then also we would like the international leaders to use the Global Magnitsky Act to sanction Chinese officials for their crimes before we see a 21st century Holocaust take place right in front of our eyes at this very moment. And how you can help is continue raising awareness, because still you'd be surprised at how many people still don't know about what's happening. Even when I introduce myself and I say what my ethnicity is, I have to go on a 5-10 minute spiel just describing who Uyghurs are and what's happening. And it's very exhausting, but if people like you guys can help raise awareness and talk about what the atrocities occurring, also one thing is try as don't say Xinjiang, also say that the Uyghurs are from occupied East Turkestan. That really helps boost our narrative, because that's usually what's missing when people miss a narrative that we're in occupied territory. And also talk obviously the things that I mentioned in the PowerPoint, the other crimes against humanity that the Chinese government is committing. Use social media to your advantage. Share any posts that you see that's raising awareness about what's happening. And use like hashtags, like hashtag Justice for Uyghur, Justice for East Turkestan, to continue this awareness, and reach out to like influential figures in your community who may not be doing enough work about this issue, because a lot of even bigger activists still don't know the extent of this oppression. Again, mobilize and organize protests in your local communities to pressure bodies to take action against Chinese actions. So we have, we have, for example, New York City on, I believe, February 5th, there's a massive demonstration taking place near the UN for the UN to take action and to send in peacekeepers before this genocide takes place to its fullest extent. But again, that's just not limited. You can also take action amongst your local communities. This event is like one of those things, and I really appreciate this for even being part of the agenda. Because we're in the United States, you can call or write your senators or representatives to support the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act of 2018. And this is a bill that was introduced to Congress just recently by Senator Marco Rubio to essentially call on China to release those who are in these concentration camps and to sanction the Chinese officials, and also list a bunch of other things that this bill is supposed to be doing. So, the powers of the people. If the people can pressure the government and pressure the government to speak up, then that's a good help for us. And you can call it right to the White House to ask the President Trump, to sign the Human Rights Policy Act after it is passed. Right now, Chinese-U.S. relations is deteriorating, and a lot of these congressmen and Trump administration is, as much as Trump is enacting anti-Muslim policy even within our own state, Trump is doing anything he can to essentially bash China at this point. So let's take that to our advantage and try to ameliorate the struggle of the Uyghurs. And then outside the U.S., you can call or write your parliament or Congress to take action and to condemn China's action. Because right now, most of the majority countries, or many countries in general, are just not even doing the basic step of condemning China's action. It's simply a statement. They're not making that statement because they're economically and strategically tied to the country. And this includes the government of Indonesia, for example, and the government of Turkey, and these, and just the government of Pakistan, for example. They've all stayed deliberately silent because of Chinese pressure. So right now, the power is with the people. And if people continue mobilizing and speaking up and pressuring the government to say something, inshallah, we'll start to see some progress. Thank you.
That was a very insightful presentation. Pretty sure most of us don't even know about it, so.
ITV, Call of Peace, Save Humanity.